Well, hey now, I'm going to focus on one of my all-time favorite artists and a couple albums from his collection. This would be Elvis Costello. Patrick Aloysius Declan McManus, I think is his name, and son of a band leader in the UK. Tremendously interesting artist. A long and varied career. I'll do an album ranking at some point in the future. But I wanted to focus and spend a little bit of time on a couple albums of his that I'm not going to say they're necessarily the two best albums of his career. I'm not quite ready to commit to that just yet. But these were albums that had a depth and an interesting kind of change of direction within his career. Although, albeit, he's somebody who's changed quite a bit and done a lot of different types of albums with different musicians over and above the work that he's done with the Attractions over the years. But these are the two albums that I'm going to focus on today. Imperial Bedroom, probably my favorite of kind of the first phase of Elvis Costello, and King of America, probably my favorite Elvis Costello album. I think I could throw the gauntlet down and say that for me. King of America is the album that probably I put on most often. So a little bit of context. Elvis Costello, for me, well, I'll back up a little bit. An artist that I've always loved, Bob Dylan. I didn't follow him from the beginning, even though it looks like I've been around for a long time. I got into Dylan probably right around Desire, and that was when I was really kind of deeply aware of Dylan, other than stuff on the radio like Blowing in the Wind and things like that. And from that point on, I followed him very closely. But there was a lot before Desire, for sure. And going back and listening to material that was released before, it's a different experience than if you've been following the artist from the beginning. Elvis Costello was an artist that I followed from the beginning. So his first record, My Aim Is True, everyone knows very well. Pre-Attractions with the band Clover, which apparently was most of, if not all of, the band that was Huey Lewis's band, which is so interesting when you think about kind of the anger in this, and it's hard to connect that with anything to do with Huey Lewis. But My Aim Is True came out in July 77. I'm not sure exactly when I got into this, but I didn't leap at this when it first came out. It was probably out before I was really fully into punk and kind of pre-new wave stuff. But in my first year university, my first year was 77, 78, and I certainly got into this record during that first year university, and I'm going to guess that it was probably the fall when I started to listen to punk. So, I got to university, I mentioned this before, heard the Sex Pistols, got into the Stranglers' first record, I think it was the first one, Radis Norvegicus, it was my first. And early on after that, got into Elvis Costello. And this record, played to death, absolutely loved it. And, who was this pigeon-toed, angry man? Jake Rivera, famously his manager, wouldn't allow any photos of Elvis smiling. So any photo that was taken of Elvis needed to be either straight or frowning or scowling. A little manipulative, but helps to set the bar in terms of who Elvis was. So this first record, again, first year university, really got into it. December 17th, 1977, at that stage, we were all watching Saturday Night Live, and we're always interested in who the musical guests were. Well, scheduled were to be the Sex Pistols, and I was already a Sex Pistols fan, super excited to see the Sex Pistols, and they famously canceled. And in their stead were Elvis Costello and the Attractions. And I forget off the top of my head what the first song was that they were playing. The second one, Less Than Zero, I think. Anyways, I can't remember, but they stopped it in the middle of the song, and Elvis stopped the band, and they played Radio. And we had not heard Radio before, because that was to come out sometime in 1978, March of 78, and that Saturday Night Live show was December of 77. But I was just blown away by the performance. It was chaotic. It was exciting. Famously, he and the Attractions, were banned from Saturday Night Live for a very long time because that wasn't what they had scheduled to play. And if you know the lyrics to Radio, I want to bite the hand that feeds me. I want to bite that hand so badly. And he was running around, and I think the cameramen were having a hard time. Anyways, fantastic, like really exciting. Pete Thomas, the drummer, was wearing a t-shirt that said "Thanks, Malk," as a reference to Malcolm McLaren, thanking him for, not having the Sex Pistols play so that Elvis Costello and the Attractions could get an opportunity. And while it's not exactly, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, in some minor way, that was my Beatles on Ed Sullivan experience. I remember getting on the phone to a good friend in Montreal and calling him up and going, "Did you just see that? That was amazing." And we were both, talking about how exciting that live performance was. And for me, that was the beginning of my what has been my lifelong passion for Elvis Costello. So fast forward only a few months, and Elvis comes out with this year's model. Incredible record. More propulsive and more energetic, really, than My Aim Is True. My Aim Is True has got, when you listen to it now, it really is actually musically a little bit muted, but the songs and the performance by Elvis are very powerful. But this one explodes. It's really, really good, this year's model. And, they actually reference the Saturday Night Live performance here in the inner. So this is the inner sleeve, and that's Elvis and the Attractions there on that little TV set on Saturday Night Live. So that was very cool. This came out, as I say, in April of 78. In May of 78, I had the good fortune of seeing Elvis play with Rockpile opening up in Mink DeVille. Midnight show at Massey Hall in Toronto. Just a fantastic show. I mean, the first time seeing Elvis was really great, extremely exciting. And that was kind of almost my first phase of Elvis Costello. I mean, you think about all of that happening within about a year. And then actually probably within 1 year also, I saw Elvis play with the Attractions at our university, Jock Carty Arena. I'd referenced that once before at Queen's in Kingston, Ontario, because I saw Peter Tosh there as well. But November of 78, the Wake Up Canada tour, and Elvis was playing in Kingston, Ontario. Very short set, famous tour where he played like for 40 minutes and then left the stage, and there was white noise, and a lot of people were angry because it was such a short show, but just gave everything, left everything on the stage, as it were. Very, very memorable. And we were kind of like 3 rows from the front, just standing up and pogoing like crazy. So again, within a 1 year stretch, I had heard the first Elvis record. I saw him on Saturday Night Live with the Attractions, blew me away. Bought and consumed this year's model, and then saw him once again in a very different environment at my university performing. And that would have all been within 1 year, sort of November 77 to November 78. So pretty cool. So that was my early days with Elvis Costello. And when I think about his music, I think about all of the different albums, all the different styles that he's done. When I was starting to think about what are, typical Attractions records and what were some of Elvis Costello's outliers. So, he's had in his career many outliers. Probably the first one would have been Almost Blue. I think a lot of people struggle with that. For me, I thought it really was a great foray into country. And what people didn't really realize is that Elvis Costello is something of a musicologist. He's got a deep love, appreciation, and knowledge of a wide variety of music, and maybe partly because of his father being a band leader. But he knows and loves many different types. Famously, he was at a Grateful Dead show in England, I think on the Europe 72 tour. So well before he became a punk, he was showing his roots and really enjoyed that. Anyways, Almost Blue, I think, holds up very, very well and interesting, and definitely a very country record. Another outlier, and these are all out of, not in any particular order, but another outlier, of course, the Burt Bacharach album. This is the one that was re-released. I've had this on CD for ages, and this is the more recent reissue. But another outlier, he had already, I think this was the beginning of his really deep torch ballad, and his singing changed and became much richer and deeper, and his voice really truly became an instrument, and it was much more than just kind of yelling and well, I shouldn't say yelling, but just the angry spewing of his vitriol. Other outliers include his sort of Northern Soul record called North. That was a really good one. This one I really love. I had the good fortune of seeing Elvis and the Brodsky Quartet play a couple times in the Tokyo area in the 90s. That was really good. And I really enjoy this record. Another outlier with Anne-Sophie von Otter, I believe is an opera singer. I don't know this record as well, but I have most of Elvis's and enjoy having them. So some different outliers. So what I want to do now is really give a little bit of context and then focus on the two records that I'm featuring today. Elvis's Imperial Bedroom and King of America, which is not really an Attractions record. I think they're on one or two songs, but very different type of record. And that's why I want to feature these two. So look through the beginning of his catalog. So I already mentioned 1977, My Aim Is True. Bursts onto the scene, the angry young man, still angry, this year's model, but with the Attractions, first record with the Attractions, which is awesome, 78. This is probably when you started to see him diversifying a little bit. Some of the arrangements here, Chemistry Class, Green Shirt, had a little bit more sophistication than those first two records, and started to explore some interesting stuff. Armed Forces, the third record. The fourth one, killer, like 20 tracks, produced by Nick Lowe. I think, again, anybody interested in Elvis Costello knows this record. Another one that I love to go back to. It's such a great, basically R&B soul record that Elvis and the Attractions do on this record. And it just, starting from I Can't Stand Up for Falling Down, and then High Fidelity at the very end. And the end of side one, Riot Act, is great. And some of the great wordsmithing that he does, things like, did I step on the brake to get out of your clutches in New Amsterdam and others. But this is wall to wall, a fantastic record. I think the next sort of jump or change in his career really came with Trust, and it's almost signaled by what's on the back. Actually not so much that, but I guess the inside sleeve. You've got the beginnings of this idea of a band, and I think it was kind of partly a joke, but it looks like Duke Ellington or something like that, or a big band. But it wasn't that this album was big band, but the arrangements were really interesting. And again, I think he took a step forward in terms of sophistication of his songwriting. Performs From Whisper to a Scream with Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze. But, some of the stuff is really gorgeous, really beautifully produced. Lots of taut, sort of tense tracks, like You Better Watch Your Step. It was typical Elvis in the sense of lyrically, it was very personal and emotive, but he started to definitely fill out vocally in things like Clubland and songs like that. You Better Watch Your Step. It was wonderful. And then, as I mentioned earlier, like one of the first outliers probably was Almost Blue, and recognizing his love of country music, which was really great. This, in a way, I think set the stage for the first record I'm going to kind of talk about, which is Imperial Bedroom. So Imperial Bedroom, both of the records I'm going to feature, Imperial Bedroom and King of America, are probably among the two that I would play most in Elvis's catalog that still, for me, hold up well years after the fact. This is produced by Jeff Emmerich. Jeff Emmerich was the engineer on some of the Beatles' work at Abbey Road. And you can really tell that the production on this goes to a whole nother level, and it really suits the arrangements and the songs that Elvis chooses. So something like Man Out of Time, I've got a 12-inch single of that as well. But, starts off with this loud, screaming, and then it just breaks into this gorgeous pop song, You know, it's like just almost Primal Scream at the beginning, and then this gorgeous pop song. And then you get some of the really beautiful ballads, And in Every Home, Town Crier, You Little Fool, Boy with a Problem. Really, it's almost like the beginnings of his torch ballad, or that he did, like later he did. Well, actually, on this one, sorry, Almost Blue is on this, so it's not on the record. Almost Blue. So Almost Blue, famously, he came up with that song after listening to Chet Baker play "The Thrill Is Gone" or sing "The Thrill Is Gone" on Chet Sings, and that moved him to write Almost Blue. And then a beautiful little bit of serendipity or linking. Later, Chet Baker performed Almost Blue, sang and performed it on trumpet, which was really cool. But Almost Blue is on here. Man at a Time, the very first track, Beyond Belief, is again one of those Elvis Costello songs that has this real sort of tension that is waiting to explode, that never really does. It's kind of got this tension all the way through, which is killer. And no chorus. It's just rambling, like beautiful chugging along vocals. History repeats the old conceits, the glib replies, the same defeats. And it's just these great word rhymes that flow into each other. And this is such a great record. I saw him on this tour as well. I think I've seen Elvis about 15 times or something, but so I'm on this tour. I don't remember this tour in particular, but this album was just, summer of 81 was an album, or summer of 82, I guess, was an album that I listened to all the time. Yeah, came out in 82. And an exquisite record, Imperial Bedroom. Now, following Imperial Bedroom was what I would consider to be kind of lean years for Elvis. He came out with Punch the Clock, which has got some great stuff on it. Every Day I Write the Book is a classic. But just somehow it felt like it was all kind of lost in the new wave, kind of flood of new wave artists. And he didn't really stick out for me. So Punch the Clock. The other one was Goodbye, a Cruel World, which for me was even less interesting. So there's some good stuff. I should go back and re-listen to them, but they're just not albums that I really feel like I really want to listen to. Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley producing this particular one. I'm wondering if they produced this one as well. Oh yeah, Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley. So, there's the songs themselves, but I think the production is very much of its time and seemed kind of dated and seemed a little bit light and thin at the time as well. So, however, after that came King of America. What a great cover. I love that there's no title on it at all. And, there's a song on here called I'll Wear It Proudly. It doesn't look like he's wearing this crown proudly. He looks a little uncomfortable with it, which I think is part of the point. But this is, besides Almost Blue, the first record that did not feature the Attractions. There's one or two songs that the Attractions are on. But this is produced by T-Bone Burnett. Production and the song arrangements and everything completely well suited to each other. There were also members of Elvis Presley's TCB band, which is the Taking Care of Business band. So that included James Burton, who's a guitarist in Elvis Presley's band for a long time, Jerry Sheff, Ron Tutt. I think those were all part of the TCB band. Mitchell Froom also does some really nice keyboards on here. And Mitchell Froom, I don't know his whole history, but he has played or did play with Crowded House for quite a long time. Some really nice organ work. This is a beautifully recorded record and produced record. Lots of space. One of the things I bring up periodically is I recognize how much I love space in music. Being able to create a little space between instrumentation somehow makes the actual instruments sound more powerful, or they have more meaning. I'm not quite sure how to put it, but I love space. I remember, a little aside, but I remember listening to the Grateful Dead, and for years, late Grateful Dead is quite a full, big sound. And then going back and listening to 72, 73 Dead, and 74, and things like Birdsong on Vancouver's P&E Coliseum in 73, I think, and realizing, oh my God, there's so much space. There's so much space in their playing, and how rich the whole thing sounded. Less is more. So, but back to Elvis and King of America. Songs on here starts off with American Without Tears. God, outside in New Orleans, the heat was almost frightening, but my hotel room, as usual, was freezing and unkind. There's a lot of great storytelling here, very personal, and the arrangements, again, like I say, is so good. Poison Rose is a really lovely song. The Big Light, Jack of All Parades, but and Sleep of the Just. The album kicks off with Brilliant Mistake, which is a gorgeous song. And then there's also a cover of Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, which was the single from this album, which kind of stands out. It's a really great song, and he really sings it with all of his heart and soul, which is great, but not necessarily the best off of this record, but because it's a well-known song, the label put that out as a single. I don't think he was too happy about that. But Indoor Fireworks, really lovely song. I'll Wear It Proudly, gorgeous ballad. And then side 2, American Without Tears, is fantastic. And Sleep of the Just. But this is an album that is, it flows really well. There isn't things that you feel like, oh, I got to lift it off and stop playing this, song, or just play one or two songs off it. I feel this whole album, beginning to end, is great. Great driving album if you like the kind of music that is not like bum, 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 but rather, again, a lot of space, a lot of room to think and listen and ruminate. So, King of America. So the two records today, my Elvis Costello Two-Fer, are Elvis Costello and the Attractions, Imperial Bedroom, King of America. I'm kind of curious about people out there who are big Elvis Costello fans, not just casual listeners. What album or albums are the real go-to for you that are in his back catalog that you go and listen to over and over and again, that seem to hold up well over the years? Love to hear that. Carpe diem, MFs. See you soon. One other aside on my Elvis Costello thing is this book, which if you get a chance to read, I'm sure, like a lot of you, big fan of music biographies and autobiographies, but some are better than others. I really love Robbie Robertson's testimony. Others, have disappointed me. I'm a huge Neil Young fan, but I've never really found that Neil's own autobiographies, he's written a few from different angles, have really done it for me. This is a really good one, Unfaithful Music. I had the good fortune of my brother kindly asking Elvis to sign it for me. 2 fits, Elvis Costello, so that was really nice. I went to see him talk about the book and talk about his life when it came out, and that was really good. But this reminds me a little bit of Chronicles, Bob Dylan's. It moves around through different parts of his life, but it also reflects on what he is interested in, what his life, it's not all chronological. And you get a real sense of his appreciation of different types of music, just how passionate he is as a fan of music, and his appreciation for different artists and different musicians. And it all makes sense now, when you start to think about the work he's done with Alain Toussaint, with some of the other artists that I show on this video, everything from Burt Bacharach to Annie-Sophie von Otter to the Brodsky Quartet. He comes at it from the point of view of wanting to try to connect or to perform or to write with other artists and within genres that he clearly really loves. Apparently, before he worked with the Brodsky Quartet, he'd been going to see them and other, chamber choir or quartets and classical music, So he came at it honestly, shall we say, and it wasn't just like, look at me, how sophisticated I am. So this is, if you get a chance, a good read. Highly recommend it. Unfaithful Music and Disappearing Ink from Elvis Costello.